let's get to the Hunter Biden news. This was shocking. So while I was on Capitol Hill, all of this is going down. I'm getting caught up afterwards. I said, this is one of the wildest things that has unfolded in terms of like legal wrangling at the high level that we've seen in what, years now, I think, at the top level of politics. Hunter Biden and his lawyers, it appears, showed up to court with a completely different understanding, Krystal, of a plea deal that they had reached with the Department of Justice. In the minds of the Hunter Biden legal team, they believed that they were not only going to plead guilty to this sweetheart deal, but that they were going to receive immunity from all future charges, and specifically related to foreign corruption. The Department of Justice was like, hold on a second, that's not really necessarily what we agreed to, and it led to an extraordinary confrontation actually inside of the courtroom. Here was a snap view of what that looked like that was actually covered live on television as was going down. Let's take a listen.
And they said, okay, so you're asking me to accept a plea agreement, but does that cover any potential charges? And she referenced the work that Hunter Biden has done for entities in foreign countries. And she said, does this preclude you from bringing FARA charges in the future if I accept this plea agreement? And the government said, no, we could bring those charges. The defense, Chris Clark, acting on behalf of Hunter Biden, disagreed with that and said, no, that's not my understanding of the agreement. And then the federal prosecutors said, there's no deal. That was at 11:31. And Chris Clark, who represents Hunter Biden, says, as far as I'm concerned, the plea agreement is null and void. Just as I left the courtroom itself, the judge determined that there should be a 10-minute recess to try and figure out whether or not the two parties can quickly come to an agreement.
That was Tom Winters at NBC. He's an absolute pro in terms of covering these things, Krystal. So after, in that 10-minute interim period, here's the most crazy part. It seems that the DOJ did actually agree to some of Hunter's demands. Because in that 10-minute interim, the Department of Justice, of course, led by Merrick Garland, agreed effectively to some immunity, at least in the future, to some of these charges, to get Hunter to plead guilty on these tax charges, which would effectively absolve him and not having to serve any jail time, regardless of the fact that he failed to pay lots of back taxes, that it was all eventually paid back by donors. And there's a lot more that we can discuss and talk about there. But then the most shocking thing is not that the Department of Justice agreed to an even more, frankly, sweetheart deal. It's that when they presented this to the judge, that the judge threw out this hastily agreed to immunized deal, effectively saying that it was too sweet, that she needs to take a lot more time, that they need to take a lot more time to actually look at it. Here, again, is some of the live coverage.
The son of the President of the United States has just pleaded not guilty. Not guilty is what he has pleaded to. The judge here says that she will not accept or reject the plea agreement. She wants more information. Basically, what she's asking for is to determine whether or not it's appropriate for her to consider something in the diversion program. This relates to the gun charge. So as part of that agreement, effectively what you have here is a provision which asks the court to weigh whether or not possibly Hunter Biden could have violated his pretrial diversion agreement as it relates to the gun charge. What would happen, according to that agreement, is that the defense and the prosecution would have the opportunity to bring the facts to the court and for the court to determine whether or not there was a breach of that. If there is a breach, then the government could then move forward and prosecute Hunter Biden on the gun charge. What she says is, wait just a minute. I'm not somebody who normally has to consider those provisions. I normally don't see a pretrial diversion agreement. And now you're putting me in the position, possibly, of being the gatekeeper as to whether or not the Justice Department and the government files charges against Hunter Biden.
There you go, Krystal. I mean, in terms of the breakdown, extraordinary move by the judge, extraordinary collapse live. Yeah. I mean, you couldn't script a more of a drama in terms of corruption, the president's son, how it really, the tax charges, the money, and all of this. So what did you make of everything as it was going down?
Well, again, just to set the context here, everyone was expecting this to be a very perfunctory, predictable hearing with zero drama. And instead, from the get-go, we had chaos and drama unfolding in what was really a wild way. So there are two pieces here that are really bad for Hunter Biden and, by extension, for his dad, which is, number one, the government did not agree to the idea that all of the potential FARA charges, that's all the foreign lobbying, unregistered lobbying stuff, they did not agree that that was part of this plea deal. And Hunter Biden and his team had to accept that. So this deal, the tentative deal that now the judge is considering whether she's even going to accept, includes immunity from drug charges, past drug charges, additional gun charges, and tax. So those are the three areas that they're saying, okay, we'll put those pieces to the side. But that leaves a gigantic swath of some of the most concerning legal trouble if you are, Hunter Biden, or again, if you are his father, Joe Biden, which is all of these foreign entanglements that we've been hearing so much about. So that's one piece that is out and out a disaster for him and his team. And the second piece is, probably when the judge comes back in 30 days, she's gonna figure out how to get to a yes on this plea deal, but it's not certain at all. She's very uncomfortable with it. As Tom Winters articulated there were pieces of it that she even went so far as to say, I'm not even sure this is constitutional. So the very status of the whole plea deal, which is a very good deal, a very sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden, I think you have to say that. The whole status of that is in jeopardy at this point. And, on the politics of it, obviously this just drags out the messiness of all of this and opens it back up into the public eye, and also makes it clear, and there were some questions about this going in, there were discrepancies over whether or not the DOJ's investigation into Hunter was continuing or not. One side said it was, the other side said, no, we got assurances it wasn't. It's very clear now that that investigation does continue. It's very clear that it's possible that he's going to face additional charges. So very, very bad day if you are Hunter Biden.
I also think this absolutely validates the criticism by the career IRS officials who said this is not how a normal tax investigation would go under any other citizen. Yeah. They said they were prevented from executing search warrants on the Biden residence. They said that this was treated with kid gloves, that this was treated in a political manner, that they never would have brought just misdemeanor, that they had a full-scale criminal investigation that they would have pursued. And clearly the judge here agrees, at the very least in principle. They're like, hey, this is not how this normally would have gone. So I think at a very basic level, it validates the IRS whistleblowers that spoke before Congress, and actually does show that these are not partisan people, are actually speaking from a place of conviction. And then again, on a basic level, we just have to return to the facts of the matter here. Why is Hunter in trouble at all? He received tens of millions of dollars from foreign governments for lobbying, which, by the way, he's on text proof, subpoenaed, saying, I don't want to register as a foreign agent, because he didn't register as a foreign agent while working with the Chinese government. Okay, so that's actually illegal. That's number one. Number two, he got all this money, which I guess is not illegal, although in my opinion it should be. Then he didn't pay taxes on that money. I mean, we're not talking about a paltry sum here. We're talking about $1.5 million. That means that $1.5 million is like 37% of whatever the sum is after he included all of his insane write-offs for prostitutes and all this other stuff. That is a colossal sum of money that we are talking about here for only a 1 to 2 year period. And then that money, part of the reason they were able to justify the misdemeanor charge, Krystal, is because they said he was current on his tax obligations, when we know it's not because he used his personal money. He used a mega Democratic donor, loaned him said money, somehow violating like federal gift tax laws and all kinds of other stuff, to pay his tax obligations. And then, I know I sound crazy here, but then in just the last couple of days, we learned that a frequent guest of the Biden White House is paying $800,000 for this fool's paintings, as if that's somehow market value.
I'm sure that's all on the up and up.
Exactly. Right. How does he afford to live in this Malibu mansion? And why does any of this matter? Look, Hunter, I genuinely wish him best. He seems like a troubled guy. I actually know some people who know him. They say he's actually fun at parties. I guess not shocking. But they were always like, look, he took it really hard, the death of his brother, and he actually was an affable dude.
He's been through hell.
He's been through hell. His mom died.
No one can deny that.
Yeah. So I have nothing against him on a personal level. It's only that so much of his shenanigans expose the lies from the Biden administration about Biden's involvement here, and especially when he's getting all of this back tax and personal profit to the family, to the brother, and so many other, from the actual connections of the president of the United States. That's when it becomes not only a scandal, but should venture into the territory of illegal, if it not already is. So some of it may be legal. I'm sure it is because of our insane laws. But I mean, he played so fast and loose. It's very easy to see here how he very likely violated the law in a number of places. And unfortunately, only because I think the Republicans are in charge of the House, they've even been able to drag any of this stuff up through an official level. Otherwise, we would never have heard about it.
So there's, let me give you what, if you turn on MSNBC or CNN,
yeah. What do they say?
what their side is going to be, right? Number one, she's a Trump-appointed judge.
Okay.
Number two, this has nothing to do with Joe Biden. This is just a personal matter involving Hunter Biden, and the process should play out, et cetera, et cetera. On the piece about her being a Trump judge, listen, it would have been crazy for them to accept a deal where he's not going to face any scrutiny over all of these foreign entanglements. I mean, that would it would be an abdication of any judge's duty to allow that to just go through, and for the government to say, oh, yeah, that's part of the deal. That would have been insane. So I think it's, based on what I can tell, entirely appropriate that she's taking some time to scrutinize this deal, which, as she put it rather mildly, has some atypical elements to it. And let's talk about those atypical elements, because that's where it goes from, oh, this is just a personal matter involving Hunter Biden and he's not president. Joe Biden has nothing to do with this. This is Joe Biden's Department of Justice we're talking about here. And so if his son is getting a deal that has quote unquote atypical elements, that very much does involve Joe Biden. Not to mention, you know, all of the evidence suggestions that Joe knew a lot more about these business dealings than he has so far said. And we'll get to that in a moment. So, you know, for the White House to just try to say, oh, no comment, and this is totally separate, et cetera, it just, no one's going to buy that. I mean, the public is certainly not going to buy that piece. And I'm certainly glad that the government and the judge were like, no. This does not take all of your troubles off of the table, because some of the most serious and most consequential in terms of the public trust elements still remain under investigation, apparently. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.